Alrighty, guys, we are live. Welcome back. Welcome back to the Sleuth Intuition channel. I'm your host, Patrick Vallejos. Hope you're having a good day. Hope your weekend was going pretty well. Everything's good on my end. Today, we're going to take a look at Karmelo Anthony and Austin Metcalf. Was this cold-blooded murder or case of self-defense? This will be part two. It's been a couple of days. There's some new information that's been released. I plan to show you guys the full arrest affidavit. Actually, I'll show you what's on the agenda. All right, so I have 3 articles that will serve as an overview and give you guys a basic idea of what happened, those of you who might be new to the case. This will include the most up-to-date information about it, about the facts and the details surrounding what happened to Austin. We'll pull up X, and we'll put the division on full display. It's a little bit disgusting on both sides, honestly, and we'll kind of determine where we are, where you're at, and where I'm at as far as that division. We'll look at Texas self-defense laws. We'll look at self-defense cases, and from a defense standpoint, cases that were successful versus some that were unsuccessful. I think we'll spend more time on comparing the Kyle Rittenhouse case to what's going on with Karmelo Anthony, and see if we're dealing with apples and apples or apples and oranges. And then I think at that point, we'll just open it up for discussion. The poll question, self-defense or murder. Hopefully you guys learned a little bit about what actually happened before making a decision. Welcome in, Miss Dog Lover. So far, so good. Thank you. Jill Moser, good to see you. The Red Queen. Hi, everyone. So happy to catch you live. It's good to see you, Red Queen. Happy Sunday. Brown-Eyed Girl, what's up? Crash Override, welcome in. And CJK says, this is already a mess. Racial lines are being drawn by some. Well, I mean, that's to be expected by the political crowd, right? Just want to make sure that you are all being careful, not jumping the gun. You know, it's the facts that matter, at least around here. What's going on, She Warrior? So we'll just give everybody an opportunity to kind of join the chat. Maybe another 5 minutes, and then we'll get started. So I believe that's Austin on the right, his father on the left. Austin, his twin brother, Hunter, I think is his name. 2 large Americans. I don't have the height and the weight on Austin, but I believe I read somewhere 6'3", 200 pounds, 6'3", 200 pounds. Here's the newest image that's circulating. I'm sure people are trying to use it to combat the image that was going around of Karmelo holding what appeared to be an airsoft gun. Sometimes all you have to do is zoom in on a photograph and just investigate things yourself, and you'll see that the weapon that he had in his hand is an airsoft gun. You can see where he took off the yellow tab at the top. There's still pieces of plastic left. And I look there because I used to play airsoft. Every once in a while, I still might. It's good exercise for old folks, you know. It helps you stay, you know, active and muscle memory. Never know when you're like a CQB type situation. What's up, Phil Bond? So the affidavit that was released, I think about 3 or 4 days ago, the copy I have isn't the best, but we can still read the information. What I've gathered is he was sitting there, and apparently Hunter has changed his story like at least 3 times that I can count. But according to what Hunter told first responders in the affidavit is that Austin literally pushed him, was trying to force him out of there. So what I want us to do is look at the law. What does the law say? And look at it through a jury's eyes. Do they have a defense here? Because it depends on a lot of things that I wasn't aware of. A lot of people say, well, what is he doing with the knife? Well, just having a knife illegally doesn't make you a murderer. And I'm going to show you some of the cases that I've uncovered today, where they were successful in using the self-defense argument in court, but they still receive some charges like illegally carrying a firearm or things like that. So one like petty crime or misdemeanor crime doesn't really mean anything when it comes to the other larger felony that's being charged. You can get charged with that. Like he may receive a charge for having the knife illegally and then still get off on self-defense when it comes to the first-degree murder charge. So I think it's important to know what the law says. What does Texas law say? What are some of the factors that are involved with having a successful self-defense argument versus an unsuccessful argument? What goes into all that? Crashed Override says everything is racist to a racist. Yeah, I don't. Yeah, I guess you can be a racist on both sides too. I don't know. I don't even know if racism is even real. It's like I think it's something else. CJK, based on what I know, I'm saying murder. I did see where someone posted Anthony texted his girlfriend he wanted to stab somebody. See, and we got to be careful with all that. You can't be basing your decisions off hearsay. I've heard a lot, and I don't know if it's fact. I heard that he skipped school. He wasn't even supposed to be there, and that he may have been looking for trouble. Is that a fact? I don't know. But I'm definitely not going to let that determine how I feel about things. I see people are very quick to make a decision. What's going on, Mustang? Turquoise Kitten, what's up? Murdering makes you a murderer. I don't know what you mean by that. The question is it self-defense or murder? We still haven't determined whether or not he's a murderer yet. Not in my eyes, anyway. It's good to see you, brown-eyed girl. So it appears, from what I've read in the affidavit, they moved the tent. So all these items back here were at one point under the tent. Law enforcement moved the tent over Austin's body while they were performing CPR, and also to preserve evidence that might have been right there. So that's why the tent is moved. Karmelo threw the knife somewhere not too far away. I think they said it was found on the third row, aisle 9, row 3 or something. So not far away. It's not like he tried to conceal it. It's more as if he was running from the area and kind of tossed it. But according to Hunter, him and Austin approached Karmelo. They made threatening remarks to him that they were going to forcefully remove him. And I think this might play a big role in the way the jury looks at things. Apparently Karmelo says, if you touch me, see what happens. So then what Austin did was he touched him. He's like, what? I touched you. And then he said, no, punch me and see what happens. And it also stated that that they didn't really believe that he had a weapon. They thought he was bluffing. Like he was kind of had his hand in the bag. Like, dude, if you mess with me, you're going to regret it. And they were like, man, you ain't got shit in there. And apparently grabbed him, physically grabbed him, and began to forcefully move him out of the area. That's when he got stabbed. So while he's being manhandled, he's kind of reaching into his bag and during the melee is when he stabs him. So is that self-defense? I don't know. Was he there looking to provoke? Apparently, that's a big thing too. If you're provoking, that could leave a self-defense plea null and void. So there's a lot of these factors that come into play. What's up, Ashley? Good afternoon. Oh, my allergies are kicking in this morning. So I don't know what this tarp right here is all about. I don't know if maybe that's Carmelo's bag. Maybe this is where the stabbing happened. So I'm thinking maybe they fell over in this area. Austin kind of runs down here, asks for help, falls to the ground, right on the the walkway of the bleachers down at the bottom. And then I'm thinking that Carmelo may have thrown the knife over here somewhere as he took off running. He didn't make it very far. Like, he didn't flee the scene, he fled this area. So they found him, I believe, on the other side of the track. She Warrior says so they may have threatened him. Yes, and I don't know if this is going to play out in the trial. Like, he's a little guy. According to the affidavit, he's like 5'9", 130 pounds. So I mean, he's not going to do anything. Right? He's not doing anything to those boys. So if you have these two large men, well, technically they're not men. Man-sized teens, I think they were 17 years old. Technically, they're still kids, teenagers. But I don't know. I think that might play out in the courtroom if they're surrounding him, making threats at him. I think that that's going to play a big part. At least, I think so. We're going to look at the law here in a minute. This is by Jamie Fravel. She titled it, "Touch Me and See What Happens." Teen said he acted in self-defense when a track meet stabbing victim put his hands on him, police say. So this is a pretty accurate and up-to-date article as far as the information. A lot of it comes from the arresting affidavit, which we're going to actually look at as well. So, a Texas teenager who allegedly stabbed another teenager to death during a high school track meet told police that he acted in self-defense. Days after the April 2nd stabbing death of Austin Metcalf, who was 17, new details have emerged about the events that led up to the altercation that resulted in his death. In the arrest affidavit obtained by local ABC outlet WFAA, police said that following the alleged incident, suspect Karmelo Anthony, 17, told officers, "I was protecting myself." As he was led away from the scene, the defendant reportedly stated, "He put his hands on me. I told him not to." Local CBS affiliate KBTX also reported on the arrest affidavit, which contains several redacted names of almost 30 students who were witnesses to the alleged altercation. And we're going to look at that right now. Well, in a few minutes. According to the arrest affidavit, one witness stated that Metcalf told Anthony he had to move his seat in the bleachers. Anthony was reportedly sitting in the seats for Memorial High School students, but he was a student of Centennial High School. After being told to move, the witness told police that Anthony reached inside his bag and told Metcalf, "Touch me and see what happens." So I think that's going to be a big part of the trial. That might even be kind of labeled like a warning. He's giving him a warning. Like, don't touch me. I'm warning you. The witness said that Metcalf then reportedly touched Anthony, and Anthony allegedly prodded Metcalf to punch him. Metcalf then allegedly grabbed Anthony. So this is the part that is important. I don't know if you can grab somebody like that, but your life, I believe under Texas law, you have to feel like your life is in danger. And you have to be able to prove that. You have to be able to convincingly prove a jury of that, or at least a judge, and then hopefully a jury. So Metcalf then allegedly grabbed Anthony, at which point a witness told police that Anthony allegedly stabbed Austin once in the chest and then ran away. The alleged weapon was reportedly found in the bleachers. When officers responded to the scene and located Anthony, the affidavit said that the teenager said without prompting, "I was protecting myself." The affidavit also stated that he was being cuffed. Anthony was identified as the alleged suspect by another officer, in which Anthony responded, "I'm not alleged, I did it." So, and that is also mirrored in the affidavit. Additional reporting on the affidavit stated that Anthony was emotional and crying hysterically as he was being taken away from the stadium by officers. On his way back to the squad car, Anthony reportedly said, unprompted, "He put his hands on me. I told him not to." He also reportedly asked officers if Metcalf was going to be okay. So I think that that's going to play a big part in the trial too. You know, he's showing concern. CJK says, if Anthony texted anyone that he wanted to stab someone, then he's toast. Yes, but I don't know why we're even talking about that. That sounds like just like a rumor. Yes, if he did say something like that, he is toast. I don't know. I think it goes both ways. If Austin said something like, "I dare somebody to sit under our tent," or something like that. The Red Queen says that they could easily take care of the smaller guy. What's going on, Jill? Blind Squirrel, what's up? The property belongs to Frisco Independent School District, FISD, and is considered a safe place. No weapons allowed on the premises. Yes, but what does that have to do with the incident? Like, yes, it's if he could be charged with illegally, possessing a weapon in a safe zone. But what does that have to do with the crime? And what is using a knife? If Austin had a gun and he protected himself with a knife, wouldn't that be a good thing? Nobody would be saying, "Oh, well, he's not supposed to have a knife." They would be saying, "Well, good thing he had that knife. He's probably going to get charged for having it." Does that make sense? Some might be thinking, well, good thing he had that knife because he was about to get his ass kicked and potentially he could have been a victim, a murder victim, right? That's the question. Was his life in danger? If you have two guys, two large men standing over you, one of them begins to grab you after you warn them not to, and they begin to push you and put their hands on you. The question is, was there a threat to your life, and can you prove that in court? He's going to have to prove that he felt like he was being threatened, and do the facts kind of back that up? Him having a knife and doing all these other things illegally, none of that matters unless there's evidence that he showed intent, like, hey, I went there looking for trouble. But I haven't seen anything like if he's just some guy who's sitting under a tent because it's raining and these two guys try to bully him out of there and forcefully move him, will he be protected under the law when it comes to self-defense? I just don't know. Let's see here. Put his hands. He's going to be okay. Anthony's family started a GoFundMe page in which they backed up his claims of self-defense. In the fundraising post, they said there was no designated seating in the bleachers that night. It's normal for students from different schools to gather under another school's tent. Karmelo had friends there. He wasn't trespassing or looking for trouble. The GoFundMe reads, adding, no student has the right to remove another student from another tent. The post accused both Metcalf and his twin brother of being known bullies and violent aggressors who reportedly tried to take Anthony's belongings and jump him. Referring to Metcalf and his brother, the poster asked, if two 200-pound attackers came at your child, what would you expect them to do? Anthony is charged with first-degree murder after his arrest. He was transferred to the Collin County Jail where he's being held on $1 million bond. So I think it's important that people know the law when it comes to this kind of thing. Here, let's go here. So this next article is titled Karmelo Anthony's lawyer says murder of teen football star Austin Metcalf could have been self-defense. And he's looking to get the $1 million bond lowered. Articles by Patrick Riley. Would have been a wrestling match. Oh, there's no wrestling match between a 130-pound 5'9" versus 6 foot 200 pounds. I mean, that's like a man beating not quite like a man beating a woman, but pretty close. You know, you would expect them to go to jail, or you wouldn't bat an eye at a woman protecting herself. Let's say a man walked up to a woman, forcefully grabbed her and pushed her, and then she stabbed him. Is she justified? I don't know. I don't know. I don't think I don't know if he's going to have a self-defense case. I think the warning, Austin, like, hey, if you touch me, dude, and putting his hand in the bag, that's going to be his only chance, really. It's like, hey, I warned the guy. But yeah, I think this is going to be played out. This is going to be a long, drawn out process, I think. Haven't seen the last of this case. I'm sure of it. I'm sure the star athlete of the school is going to go overboard. CJK, and that right there isn't allowed by GFM. I looked it up, but what isn't allowed? It would be interesting to learn of the politics involved with the families involved. Yeah, it almost sounds like Austin's family was like, he did what he was supposed to do. They were happy that he confronted him. I feel like that was a huge mistake. I feel like if you had a problem with this person, you need to go get somebody of authority. I wish that would have happened. Blind Squirrel says, my opinion is Karmelo will plead out on a lesser charge. Hey, that's a good prediction. What would it be? Like manslaughter? Maybe they'll give him like 10 years or something like that. 10 to 15. Why is the kid carrying around a knife? In my opinion, he's looking for trouble. He wants it. So do you think everybody who carries around a knife is looking for trouble? Or is it just the black kids? And we got to get to the heart of this. He's a 130-pound guy. He's only 5'9". We're talking about he's kind of petite, like a petite person, you know? So I'm assuming if he had that knife, he had it for self-defense. Maybe this wasn't the first time he's been bullied. Grunge truck, yep. Frisco, Texas. CJK says, and it looks like he was picking a fight so he could use it and claim self-defense. But where do you see that at? Because I think that that's what they're going to try to paint the picture, is that he was there looking for trouble, egged him on, had the knife ready. But I don't know. I don't know the truth. The truth sounds like they tried to forcefully move him from a place that he had every right to be. I think the question is going to come down to, was his life, did he feel like his life was at risk? Did he feel like they were threatening his life? Because if he can't prove that, it's over for him. Welcome in Orion Home. Florida self-defense has to be proportionate. First to fist, or fist to fist, gun to gun, etc. Anthony wasn't punched. He was taunting and then was grabbed, not punched. Yeah, see, that doesn't sound very safe. Punch to punch, you got a guy who weighs 200 pounds versus a guy who weighs 130. I don't think 130 pounds going to get to punch. Once he gets punched, he could already be dead. So I don't think that that's true. That doesn't sound accurate, because people die from getting punched all the time. Ashley, stuff starting to come out now, so it does sound like Anthony was protecting himself. Yeah, information's still coming in. There's not a whole lot to be found in the affidavit. The only thing I found was another discrepancy in Hunter's story. In the affidavit, he told one of the first responding officers that his brother grabbed his bag, and grabbed him physically. Grunge truck, all of them were athletes. That's my understanding. There's been some mixed reports going on, but it's my understanding that they're both athletes from separate schools. Had he picked up a rock or something already there, it would lend itself to self-defense. I agree with CJK. He brought a knife with him. Did he expect trouble? Did he initiate the conflict? So that kind of paints a picture like everybody that's carrying a knife is just looking for trouble. If you're carrying a knife for self-defense, wouldn't that be the perfect time to pull it out? So you carry your knife all this time, in hopes never to use it. And then here's these two guys breathing down your neck. You warn them, like, don't touch me. They do it anyway. They grab you, they push you, then you stab them. I think the law states it does have to kind of be the equivalent to force. So I don't know what that means. Does that mean that Austin had to be on top of him, trying to choke him? Not just pushing him around? Like, what is the equivalent? Is that maybe two men, 2 versus 1, where they're both attacking him? So he pulls out the knife. Like, I'm trying to figure out what the law says there in Texas. Mustang says, I don't think the brothers had the right to attack him. Should have gotten a coach or adult. Yes, but does that mean that they deserve to die? Is them being kind of kind of be looking for an altercation, being aggressive? Does that mean that they should have been stabbed? That, to me, that's the question. Yeah, you should never put your hands on anybody, ever. Grunge Truck says if a fight without a weapon started, it would have been broken up quickly. You don't know that. You have no idea what would have happened. Carmelo could have stood up. Austin could have punched him. He could have fell and broke his neck on the bleachers. CJK says he was already in trouble before having the knife at school, and the bullying aspect always comes up. How do you know he was already at trouble? He was already in trouble before having the knife at school. Where did you get that information, CJK? Yeah, Red Queen, we haven't heard the last of this. I think this is going to be a big legal battle. But Blind Squirrel might be right. He might plead to a lesser charge, especially if he was there to provoke a fight. You know, he may have created just enough evidence for himself to, to take a self-defense plea or give himself at least enough leverage to bargain it down. Grunge says even Jack Ruby got the death penalty in Texas. He did not have the right to be there. CJK says he did not have the right to be there. Yeah, he did. He had every right to be there. Why couldn't he sit in the bleachers? See, I think that's where people are disagreeing right now. Why wouldn't somebody have the right to be in a public area? Those boys don't own those bleachers. I think the question is, did he sit under the tent to provoke? Thank you, Jari. All right, let's read this short article here. The attorney for Carmelo Anthony, the 17-year-old accused of murdering football star Austin Metcalf at a Texas track meet, insists he doesn't have any reason to think the killing wasn't in self-defense. Of course, attorney's going to say that, right? Defense attorneys are going to say what they need to say, regardless of what they believe or not, and will request the teen's bond be lowered from the $1 million. Anthony has been holed up in the Collin County Jail on the 7-digit bond since he was charged with fatally stabbing Metcalf, also 17, and leaving him to die in his twin brother's arms during the athletic event in Frisco Wednesday morning. After briefly meeting with the teenager for the first time on Friday afternoon, Anthony's attorney, Derek Walpole, told NBC Dallas that at this point in time, he believes his client acted in self-defense. And he thrust a knife into Metcalf's heart, which is what Anthony had allegedly told police during his arrest. I know that my client said it was self-defense. I don't have any reason to disbelieve that, but I need to develop facts, talk to people, and figure out what's going on before I make any statements about what I think happened. Walpole told the outlet outside of the prison, I don't have any reason to think it wasn't self-defense at this time. All right. Third article. Fundraiser for Texas football star Austin Metcalf's accused killer rakes in 60,000. So it's turning into like a very politically polarizing case. Some people are supporting and some people are defending just based off of race alone. They don't care about facts. They don't care about anything. They're just like, oh, it's a black kid and a nice white kid, and he was where he shouldn't have been. And so he told him to leave. He didn't leave, so he stabbed him. Just another black kid out there looking for trouble. Could be. But I don't know if the facts are telling us that right now. So it's kind of interesting to watch people make up their mind before the facts come out, just based off of what we know so far. It's kind of interesting. He could have gone and sat under his school's designated tent. He didn't have a designated tent. So if he sits under somebody else's school tent, he deserves to get forcefully pushed out of there and potentially get his ass kicked. Nobody's saying what he was doing was right or not annoying, but does he deserve to get confronted the way that he did and threatened with violent and physical, being physically removed from a place that he had every right to be? Grunge Truck says he would be risking his physical career, his football career, if he got overly physical with the kid. That doesn't mean it's going to stop him. J Ray, what's up? I doubt he could get 12 people to agree that his fear for his life was reasonable, a reasonable belief. Well, how do you know that without knowing all the facts? Like, what do you mean by that? Hey, what's up? What's up, Jason? It means like equal force. So if you are just fist fighting, you can't pull out a gun. See, to me, that's bullshit. I would like to see a 60-year-old man in a street fight with a 20-year-old professional boxer. You know what I mean? Or a 20-year-old high school kid. You're telling me that that old man doesn't have the right to pull out a gun after getting punched in the face by him? See, I don't believe that. I don't believe that that's correct. I don't see how fist to fist, you know what I mean? Because I'm getting up in age. I don't want to get in a street fight. I know how deadly they can be. All it takes is one move and your neck's broken, you're paralyzed, you get brain damage. All it takes is one good shot. If you come at me with your fist up, I might shoot you. If you come at me and I feel like you're going to hit me with your fist, I might pop you. So to me, I'm just as curious what the hell the law says because if I might get myself into trouble. Mustang says, I don't think they deserve to die, but if they hadn't touched him, maybe the knife would not have been used. I agree with that, and that may have been true. Maybe not this time, but what about down the line with somebody else? Maybe he's looking for that. He's trying to commit a murder, but also create a defense at the same time, which does happen. Yeah, I think it's a tough case. I don't think it's as easy as everybody's making it out to be. Like, oh, some black kid looking for trouble. He's sitting where he wasn't supposed to be. He got what he was looking for, and then he used it as an excuse to murder. I just don't think it's that easy. Mustang says maybe they had history or a reputation. Could be. Those are some of the rumors that I'm hearing too, that these guys were bullies. But like I said, it's just rumors. You know what I mean? Inquisitive, what's up? Says clearly murder. Looked it up online. I read different articles on different news sites. J Ray, dude, when my brother was in sixth grade, a kid at his school traded him a knife for like 4 Pokemon cards and he got suspended. Well, yeah. Sensei, what's up? Security guards physically move people, doesn't give someone the right to stab somebody. Opposing teams don't usually mingle. Well, security guards, that's their job, to physically move people. And it's also one thing if the property owners are asking you to leave, because then it's officially trespassing, Sensei. They're being asked to leave legally. Like, hey, you're being trespassed out of here. At that point, you can be forcefully moved out, kind of like a bouncer forcefully moving somebody out of a bar. But I don't get to sit in a bar and look over at the guy sitting next to me and say, hey, I'm bouncing you out of here, buddy, and then grab him around the neck and start dragging him out of the bar, because he took my friend's seat or whatever. Like, hey, my friend was sitting there. So, like, this is a public space. Oh, well, you got to get out of here. This is designated for us. And then, I just start physically trying to throw the guy out. It doesn't work that way. I don't think it's good to try to be a tough guy anywhere. You know what I mean? Because most tough guys aren't out there trying to be tough. They just usually react to people who aren't as tough as they think they are. I guess my point is this: if you're looking for trouble and you know you have a knife on you and you're ready to use it and you're provoking somebody into a fight and you stab them, that is murder. My only question is that what happened? Is that what we're dealing with? Or are we dealing with somebody who sat in a place that others deemed that they weren't supposed to, but legally they had every right to be? And then these men forcefully try to move them physically, and then this person defended themselves in fear for what might happen. What's the truth? Homie, don't play that says he was from an opposing school, so should have been at the other bleachers. There is a home and an away side for a reason. Yeah, should have. People should do a lot of things and shouldn't do a lot of things. I'm talking about legally. Like if somebody, what he did, I don't think if he just went and sat down under a tent and kept his mouth shut and wasn't causing any problems, I think he has a defense. I think he has a self defense case, right? You can't forcefully move somebody out of an area they have every right to be. And then again, you can't stab somebody because they push you um, and claim self defense. You literally, so that's why I'm waiting for the facts, guys. I don't know exactly what happened. I don't know if he grabbed him, slammed him down on the ground. I really have no clue. All I know is that he doesn't have any marks on his face or anything in his mugshot. So it doesn't look like he got roughed up too bad. That I don't know. Here, we'll pull up the affidavit after we go through a little bit of this article here. I just want to catch up on the chat. Mustang says, I don't think it was self defense, but I don't see it as first degree murder either. Yeah, I'm not sure, Mustang. Blind says, was there any chatter on social media before the incident that indicated that they might have hostile behavior during a track meet? I don't know. Do you think that that'll be important during a trial? Let's say they are like known bullies. Do you think that matters? Does it, let's say they're bullies and they've been known to beat up kids all the time. Does that mean that by confronting Karmelo and trying to forcefully grab his bag and push his physical body out from that area, that he had the right to defend himself with lethal force, even if they were bullies? CJK says, and the track meet areas are there. They set up food for their teams. It's not like mixing designated bleachers. Yeah, it is. Here, I'll show you the images. It's exactly what it is. They're just claiming public bleachers for themselves. Can't do that. It's all for the general public right here. Not only is it for the general public, it's right in the middle. They didn't even like designate a spot off to the side. So you have three different schools right next to each other. Not only that, it was raining, right? If it's raining, he may have been looking for shelter. Hey, you can't be under my tent. But yeah, you can't just set up a tent. I'm sure that this is tradition and it's like an unspoken rule. Don't get me wrong. Like I'm assuming there's an unspoken rule, like, hey, where we have our tent, it's kind of like some type of security, sense of security. But yeah, I mean, I'm talking from a legal standpoint. You should be able to sit anywhere you want. It's kind of like an open movie theater, right? Let's say you're sitting there, it's just you and your wife. You're enjoying the movie. There's hundreds of seats. It's only you two. And then some guy walks in and sits right next to your wife. Is that annoying? Is that stupid? Is the guy looking for trouble? Yes, but does he have the right to do it? Absolutely. I don't have the right to get up and forcefully grab him and move him away from us. You know what I mean? But is it stupid for him to sit right there when he had all these other options? Absolutely. But that doesn't mean that I get to physically harm him. And if I do physically harm him, what does the law say that he can do to me in return? Does he have the right to defend himself with lethal force, or does it just have to match whatever I'm doing, right? If I'm grabbing him, all he can do is grab me back. Brown Girl says, why is he not allowed to sit where he wants? That's what I'm saying. Legally, I think he is. But if he's an athlete, he knows the rules. He knows he's not supposed to be sitting there. And, high school has their own rules, and maybe he was protesting that, which then again, I don't think you should ever put your hands on people. I think there's lessons to be learned here. Sensei says, I'm not looking at it as a black and white thing. I'm looking at it as somebody used a weapon against an unarmed person. Yeah, but we're talking about a 130-pound person versus a 200-pound person. I mean, his arm is a weapon compared to that little guy. How would you feel? Let's remove Carmelo as a man and let's put a teenage 17-year-old girl in his place. Is she allowed to pull out a knife? Or does she have to fight this guy with her bare fists? Then again, what does the law say? All right, a fundraiser for a Texas teen accused of fatally stabbing Austin Metcalf and leaving him to die in his twin brother's arms has raked in over $60,000. As the teen maintains, he acted in self-defense. The Give, Send, Go campaign was reportedly set up by the family of Karmelo Anthony, who cops say confessed to the horrific stabbing at the track meet in Frisco, Texas last Wednesday. The page claimed that the narrative being spread is false, unjust, and harmful. As a family of faith, we are deeply grateful for all of our support during this trying period. Your prayers and assistance mean more to us now more than ever, according to the fundraiser. The company, which also hosted a fundraiser that brought in hundreds of thousands for Daniel Penny's legal defense after he was charged in the New York City subway chokehold death, did not immediately respond to a request for comment to confirm the authenticity of the campaign. The fundraiser had raked in over $60,000 in donations from 1,600 donors as of Sunday morning today. Many of the commenters claimed that Anthony had been bullied by Metcalf before the 17-year-old allegedly pulled a knife and stabbed Metcalf in the heart. Good luck, young man. Bullying must stop. One person wrote, while another chimed in, let this be a message to all bullies. Don't start no stuff, won't be no stuff. Anthony was arrested Wednesday for allegedly killing Metcalf after the fiasco football star asked Anthony move from his track team's tent, according to cops. Metcalf's family said that he had never met Anthony before. After the initial confrontation, Anthony unzipped a bag, reached inside, and told Metcalf, touch me and see what happens. A witness told police, according to the arrest report. Moments later, Metcalf grabbed Anthony to tell him to move, and Anthony pulled out a black knife and stabbed Austin once in the chest. The teen suffered a stab wound to the heart and later died in the arms of his identical twin brother Hunter. Anthony, who told cops he was acting in self-defense, has been charged with first-degree murder. So yeah, I mean, I just don't know what the hell is going to happen here. I mean, if some kid grabbed my daughter like that and she stabbed him, I mean, I don't know. Maybe that would be. I feel like that could still be excessive. You know what I mean? Like you're telling me this boy just grabbed you and tried to forcefully push you, and you stabbed him. I don't know. I really don't know what to think. I just feel like you shouldn't be touching. You shouldn't be putting your hands on people. Think about the Apple River stabbing sleuth. We talked about that on part one. He was convicted of the stabbings, absolutely, and I think that that's what's going to happen here. He went looking for trouble. He provoked trouble. He got trouble, and then he used deadly force. So I think it might depend, and we're going to look at Texas law here in a minute. I want to open up this affidavit, and I apologize if it kind of strains your guys' eyeballs. It's a horrible copy. I apologize in advance. Grunstruck says his parents will be investigated to see what political affiliation they run with. Blind Squirrel says Texas has the Castle Doctrine, better known as the Stand Your Ground. Yep. And we're going to read about that. Grunstruck, I'm sure his parents will be investigated. Absolutely. Was he competing in the track meet, though? That I don't know. Doesn't say in the affidavit. I think the self-defense card will only stand if you were in imminent danger. Yeah, I think he's going to have trouble proving that, Sensei. I think he's going to get convicted. Very similar to the Apple River stabbing, to where after an investigation, they're going to find some kind of supporting information that he went there looking for trouble. Because if he's an athlete, he knows better. So, I mean, there's a good chance that he's been bullied before. He weighs 130 pounds. He's only 5'9". Like, we're talking about a little dude here. He wouldn't stand a chance against that guy in a fight unless he knows how to fight. People usually carrying around knives don't know how to fight. Well, I guess that's not true. I've seen people who can fight get stabbed and stab people. So guess it just depends on the person. But yeah, 5'9", 130 pounds for 6'3", 200 pounds. Like, that's not a fair fight at all. There's weight classes for a reason, folks. Unless he's and the boys knew how to fight. They took jujitsu. Like, he had no chance. Brown-eyed girl says, I think it was a bunch of bullies dictating the bleachers, trying to be the boss, and they took it too far. Just my opinion. But what does the law say, brown-eyed girl? Does the law say if you're bullying somebody and you're trying to be the boss and you take it too far, does that give somebody the right to stab you in the heart? Did you take it too far to where you were threatening their lives? Like, where are we at from a legal standpoint? Okay, so I'm going to kind of skip these other pages. We already know the narrative. Maybe we'll read this first one. Okay, I immediately left my office, ran across the Staley Middle School parking lot. This is Officer Cortez, first responder. Ran around the school parking lot towards the southwest entrance into the stadium. As I entered the stadium, 2 high school students informed me that the victim was on the north end of the stadium by the bleachers under the Memorial High School tent. Officer Cortez did not identify those students. Next, he proceeded towards the north end of the stadium, the visitor side, on foot. As he got closer to the north end, I could see the Memorial High School tent with multiple individuals under the tent. Once I arrived onto the north side bleachers, an adult male who was on the track pointed out the suspect. I was able to identify that witness. The individual that was pointed out to me was a black male wearing a gray hooded sweater and a dark colored Nike pants. The suspect at this point was on the north end, was on the track on the north end. So see, he didn't try to flee the scene. So by the time cops got there, he's just kind of lingering. He's still on the track. He's just on the opposite side, kind of just appears to be standing there. There was a chain link fence that separated me from the suspect. I gave the suspect instructions to keep his hands in the air. During this time, the suspect said verbally out loud, "I was protecting myself." It should be noted that I had not questioned him about the incident when he made that comment. I asked him if he had any weapons, and he said no. I patted him down for weapons while we were walking along the fence. I did not locate any on his person. I instructed the male to continue waiting along the fence, which he complied, towards an area where there was an opening in the fence that led the suspect in handcuffs, handcuffed behind his back, and had him sit down on the ground. Officer Ritchie, after he gave me consent, no weapons were located. While the suspect sat on the ground, I advised that I had the alleged suspect. The suspect then responded and says, "I'm not alleged. I did it." Next, Officer Ritchie and I walked the suspect to patrol vehicle 2412, which was Ritchie's patrol vehicle, which was on the northeast gate of Kuykendall Stadium, and we were walking to the squad car. So that's basically how they found him and where he was at. The interesting part is on page 3 to 4. Okay. So the subject was possibly wearing a Centennial High School attire. It was believed he was a student there for the sporting event. So that kind of goes to the question that we were asking earlier. So they're assuming that, yeah, he was there, to participate. So he was in his school attire and everything. This had all taken place on the visitors' side of the stadium, the north side. The victim was under the Memorial High School tent in the bleachers. At around this same time, school resource officer Cortez arrived on the scene and began assisting the victim, trainers, and the other parties. Officer Cortez also advised on the radio that he also had the suspect. Sergeant Otis was working the 50s sector as the sergeant. He was in full Frisco Police Department uniform with distinct patches and badge and a police duty belt. He was also in a marked Frisco Police Department patrol vehicle. Sergeant Otis walked up to the visitor bleachers and observed the victim being transferred by Frisco Fire Department personnel and also the athletic trainers. The weather began to turn and it began to heavily downpour rain. At this time, some of the FISD staff moved the memorial tent to cover the victim and the FPD personnel. Sergeant Otis began using his city-issued phone to snap crime scene photos to preserve as much of the scene as possible due to the weather and the large gathering people that were involved in the incident. Other officers began to set up the crime scene with tape, moving non-essential personnel out of the immediate area. Okay, I'm just looking for a witness testimony. I think this is it right here. Okay. So this is Taylor Wetzel, Officer Taylor Wetzel. When I arrived on the scene, I grabbed a roll of crime scene tape from my trunk and proceeded to the visitors' bleachers where dispatch advised the victim was. While I was walking towards the visitors' bleachers, I was approached by a witness who identified himself as redacted. Looks like it starts with a J here. I think it's the brother and a friend. So redacted began telling me what happened. I asked him where the stabbing occurred, advised it happened under the Memorial High School pop up tent in the visitors' bleachers. I immediately informed Sergeant Otis where the witness stated the stabbing occurred and gave him the crime scene tape to start securing the crime scene. I then had redacted move to the walkway under the visitors' bleachers out of the rain to further speak with me. The following is a summary of my contact with redacted. Advised he was sitting under the Memorial High School pop up tent with his team and was near the victim, Austin, and the suspect, who was later identified as Karmelo Anthony. Anthony was from Centennial High School and was sitting under Memorial High School tent. Austin had told Anthony that he needed to move out from under the team's tent, and Anthony grabbed his bag, opened it, and reached inside and proceeded to tell Austin, "Touch me and see what happens." No one really thought Anthony really had any weapons in his bag, and Austin proceeded to touch Anthony. And then Anthony told Austin to punch him and see what happens. A short time later, Austin grabbed Anthony to tell him to move, and Anthony pulled out what redacted recalled as a black knife and stabbed Austin once in the chest and then ran away. Austin began grabbing his chest and telling everyone to get help. Redacted advised he did not know Anthony's name, but stated another Memorial track member, initials EP, was friends with Anthony and he could identify Anthony. Described Anthony as a black male, skinny with possible goatee, short puffy hair, wearing Centennial High School clothing. This concluded his contact. So I think we have a clear picture. He physically put his hands on him, but legally, is he able to defend himself with lethal force? Hey, what's up, Cindy? Really could have just let the kid stay there or other kid get up and just move. Egos. I'm not making okay to stab somebody. Yeah, I feel like everybody was making mistakes here. Feeling like you had the right to kick somebody out of there and then thinking they had the right to stab somebody who was doing that. I feel like they were both wrong. And you can't go back now. Okay, because this is kind of how I feel right now. I created an image. Let's pull this up. So this is how I feel with these types of cases. I feel like the world is watching the case and kind of making their decisions about it. And I'm in the back watching the case and watching the people watching the case. It's like there's two potential situations going on. The division amongst us in the way that we interpret the information that's provided to the public, the way people skew information. I'm watching it all. I'm watching the watchers, I guess. All right, let's take a look at Texas law here. Actually, let's catch up on the chat. Cindy says the tent's reserved for designated team. I don't know. That dude could have gotten an actual adult to ask him to move. Yep, I agree. I agree with that. No, she should back off and get to a place of safety. Depends on whether Austin would have let Anthony walk away. I don't know. He may have been bullied in the past and he may have been protesting. He may even have thought that if he did stab him, it would be in self-defense, but I don't think he's going to be able to go that route. The more information that comes out, it looks like he's going to get probably manslaughter, I think, or maybe second-degree murder. Disagree. If you aren't on that track team, then you don't have the right to sit in the designated team seating area, etc. Yeah, I mean, you don't have a right, but legally you can, right? You know what I mean? Like they don't own that area. He knew that he wasn't supposed to be sitting there, but also it's raining. Is he's like, okay, nobody's sitting here. I'm just going to go under the tent. I don't want to get rained on. What's the big deal? When your team gets here, I'll get up and I'll move. But as far as the right, I think he had every right to be there under the law. CJK, it comes down to being asked to leave and he refused. I bet we'll see some more racial aspects of this case, unfortunately. Yeah, we are. I think we're seeing that now. That's all it is right now. Nobody's waiting on the facts. They're just like, oh, more white privilege. And then on one side, it's like, up, just another violent black person. Nobody's looking at the facts. Let's go to the Red Queen. I don't go to a football game and go sit with the team, cheerleaders, or the band or their personal belongings. How is this track meet different? Well, I think it's kind of like when your team's not participating in one single event, you have a designated area where you go to. So you go from a participant to somebody viewing, I think. Or maybe even family and friends. CJK, if Austin was beating the crap out of Anthony and then was stabbed, that's a bit different. Yeah, that is a bit different. So I don't know if Carmelo's going to have a self-defense argument. And that's really what I'm trying to figure out. Sherry Faye, what's up? And this guy went there prepared for conflict. I think this was premeditated. Jara, yes. I'm watching you watching Sleuth, watching the watchers. I felt eyeballs behind me. I was afraid to turn around. I was like, you know what? I think I'm so clever watching the watchers, but I think somebody's watching the watcher watching the watchers. Guess that was you, Cindy. CJK makes me wonder how Anthony would have reacted had an adult asked him to leave. Yeah, this is going to be drawn out. We're going to find out whether or not they had a history of bullying people. We're going to learn all kinds of stuff about Karmelo. Was he a troublemaker? Um, they're going to pull everything out from their social media. It's going to get ugly. It's already ugly. Cindy says, and really, what's the big deal? Just let him stay. Well, that's one of the things that kind of bothered me. Austin's brother Hunter, he's kind of changed his story a few times. And all of the interviews that he gives further away from the actual incident make it seem as though Carmelo was the aggressor. They sat down and he was like hurling insults at them. Jari says, I believe you can sit anywhere you want to, but he knew it would attract trouble. And I think that will go towards intent. If it was his intention to create a disturbance so that he could eventually have an altercation, which he could then use deadly force. And then after creating this whole atmosphere, he could use that as part of his defense during a trial. People commit murder like that all the time. Oh, I was cleaning my gun and I shot him. Like, sure you were. Okay, Texas self defense laws are rooted in a strong tradition of individual rights and are notably permissive compared to many other states. They allow individuals to use force, including deadly force, to protect themselves, others, or property under specific conditions. So let's focus in on that, guys. Specific conditions you're able to use lethal force, or they call it deadly force. These are primarily outlined in the Texas Penal Code, Chapter 9, Justification, excluding criminal responsibility. Below is an overview of the key provisions written in a clear and concise manner based on the legal framework as it stands as of April of 2025. Yep, exactly, CJK. So some might say, well, if the boys never confronted Karmelo, this never would have happened. But then again, if Karmelo wouldn't have provoked it, sitting where he knew he shouldn't be sitting. So there's two ways to paint this picture. There's this way, that way, and then there's the truth. Okay, number one, general self-defense, Texas Penal Code 9.31. When is force justified? A person can use force against another when they reasonably believe it's immediately necessary to protect themselves from the other person's use or attempted use of unlawful force. Reasonable belief. Okay, now words matter. Reasonable belief. The belief must be one that a typical person in the same situation would hold. No perfect judgment is required, just reasonableness. No duty to retreat. Texas does not require you to retreat before using force if you're in a place where you have a legal right to be, your home, car, or public space. Unless, okay, I want you guys to pay very close attention to this. Unless you provoked the situation. So let's read this again. So I think this is going to be the argument in court. Did he provoke this situation? No duty to retreat. Texas does not require you to retreat before using force if you're in a place where you have legal right to be. For example, your home, car, or public space. Unless you provoked the situation. CJK, being the bigger, better person is something I preach to my family, and teenagers don't get it. No, I was a rough teen. I got into fights, I don't know, monthly, if not weekly. I was in basically a riot one time that was on the news. I know how dangerous it can be. I've had friends that died in street fights. That's why I don't. But what's the law? What is the law? Maybe next time somebody threatens, physical violence, you should just fucking run. Just run, get out of there. Because really, there's nothing to do. Either you take a punch to the face, or you wait for them to actually pull out a weapon before you can do anything in some of these states. Jay Ray says, my prediction is that he'll probably take a deal if they're charging him with capital murder right now. They'll lower it to second degree murder or manslaughter. Cindy with the super chat. Thank you. As always, interesting conversation. I appreciate that, Cindy. Thank you so much. Don't take a knife to a fist fight. Well, what if one of your fists is the size, or one of their fists is the size of two of yours? At that point, you're not really fighting fist to fist. You're fighting fist to sledgehammer. You know what I mean? I don't know if you've ever been punched by somebody that can actually fight. When they put their hip into it and they turn it over, you could. I had a buddy who had his jaw shattered, just completely shattered. He had to get it wired shut. I don't know that. That doesn't sound fun. Yep, definitely a case to watch. I mean, think about it. He had every right to be there under the law. Like who how is it I think we need to tell the truth about this. Um there was many wrong things that happened, right? You shouldn't be trying to forcefully move somebody and you shouldn't be trying to act like you own the whole damn bleachers. But that doesn't mean that if somebody tries to move you, knowing that you have every legal right to be there, doesn't necessarily mean that you have the right to stab somebody if they try to push you out of that location. Or do they? They might. Kick him in the balls. Kick him in the nards. Wolfman ain't got nards. Kick him anyway. I'm curious to know were the adults during no adults. No adults in the area. He knew that when he sat down, Sleuth. I don't know. Remember, it was raining. The event hadn't started yet. So these guys are all early. They had just set up the tent. Even the boys who had a confirmation with Karmelo had just returned from kind of killing time. So if it's raining and nobody's under the tent, I mean, what's wrong with sitting under there? There's nobody in the bleachers. It's just you. And they even said something like, "Oh, we are always told by our coaches to protect our stuff, because people will go around, they could steal." So what are they saying? Because he's a black guy that he's going to steal from them? There's a lot of weird things going on with all of this. I think people need to admit them forcefully trying to move Karmelo out of there was wrong. I think that's the part that I struggle with. Trying to force him to move was wrong, and him using such deadly force was wrong. I think that's my standing at this point in time. J Ray, when you're outnumbered by a bunch of kids that are bigger than you and you shouldn't be sitting in that spot, just go back to your own spot, kid. Yeah, I think we can all agree that it could be annoying, but just because somebody's being annoying, does that mean you physically, handle them? Okay, so limitations on that. So I'll read that part again. Does not require you to retreat before using force if you're in a place where you have a legal right to be, which he did. Carmelo had every legal right to be there. It was a public space. But the question is, did he provoke the situation? Limitations. You can't use force if you provoked the encounter, right? So he's going to have a hard time convincing a jury that he did not provoke this encounter. But at the same time, did he or didn't he? Are they going to consider just sitting under another school's tent a provocation? Yeah, I mean, it's going to be crazy. It's going to be splitting hairs. Unless you abandon the encounter and the other person continues the aggression. Verbal provocation alone doesn't justify force. Okay, so Carmelo was just talking shit. That's not provocation. That doesn't give you the right to get up out of your seat and physically put your hands on somebody. Okay, let's get into deadly force and self-defense. J Ray, bottom line is that we don't know why Anthony was there yet. We need to hear from him. Yep. And we need the evidence to back it up because there could be all kinds of intent, right? There could be intent on his side and there could be intent on Austin's side saying that he is a bully and that he planned to make an example out of somebody. You never know. CJK says kids rifle through other people's property when they shouldn't be to steal. My grandson had a new pair of Oakleys stolen out of his baseball bag at a team event, but it was another kid on his team, I think. Yeah, kleptos. But just because there's a possibility of theft, does that give somebody a right to tell you where you can and cannot sit? Jari says simply sitting down provoked the trouble, in my opinion. I agree that could be correct, but legally, no. That's not grounds for provocation. We just read that. Verbal provocation alone doesn't justify force. On either end, I'm assuming. Yeah, it's going to get ugly. And also, I was thinking Mustang, like it must be horrible to return to those bleachers in that facility. Every time you walk on that facility, you're going to look down and be like, "Dude, a man died here." I always get this eerie feeling when I go to a place where I know somebody had passed away recently. It's just like this dark cloud, kind of like Delphi. It's just like an eerie feeling. It's like that residual energy. Oh, that sounds awful. Felt like such a fool for bringing them to school. All right, let's continue on. Deadly force and self-defense, Texas Penal Code 9.32. When deadly force is justified, you can use deadly force if you're justified in using regular force under 931. So, general self-defense. Number 2, you reasonably believe deadly force is immediately necessary to protect yourself from immediate death or serious bodily injury. Okay, so you have a 200-pound man grabbing you, physically pushing you. Does that equal imminent serious bodily injury or possible death? I think that's possible. And it doesn't have to be true. He just has to honestly believe that. We don't need to believe it. The question is, did he believe that at the time? Honestly. Stand your ground. Texas has a stand your ground provision embedded in 9.31 and 9.32. If you're lawfully present and not engaged in criminal activity, you don't have to retreat before using deadly force, even in public places. So if he was there and he was rifling through people's items, he's in the commission of a crime. So he basically would be considered committing a murder while committing a crime. So there's no self-defense there. That voids it out. A presumption of reasonableness. Your belief that deadly force was necessary is presumed reasonable if the attacker unlawfully and forcefully entered or tried to enter your occupied home, vehicle, or workplace. The attacker was committing or attempting a crime like robbery or sexual assault. You didn't provoke the attacker and weren't committing a crime other than minor traffic violations. So I think they put other than minor traffic violations because of road rage. Like, oh, you cut somebody off, you're breaking the law, but that doesn't give them the right to cut you off, get out of the car and shoot you or pull out a gun on you. So I don't know. It's looking like Karmelo might have a case here. He wasn't in the commission of a crime. J-Ray says that's why I think they will offer him a deal to spare the community the trial. I don't think he's going to take a deal. He said, touch me and find out. I think he's stuffed on that. I don't know. I think that helps his case. I think that helps. It's like he's giving them a warning. You know what I mean? And I'll show you why. That comes up in another case that we're going to look at here in a minute. He actually warned them, like, "Hey, back off, dude. Like, I'm ready to use force against you if you touch me again, I'm going to show you." So it's like if he would have never touched him, this would have never happened. But just because he touched him, does that mean he gets to stab him in the chest? Okay, deadly force or defensive property, non-deadly force. You can use force to protect your own property or someone else's if asked from theft, criminal mischief, or trespass when it's immediately necessary. Deadly force for property. Texas uniquely allows deadly force to protect property under stricter conditions. You're justified in using regular force to protect the property. You reasonably believe deadly force is immediately necessary to prevent imminent commission of arson, burglary, robbery, aggravated robbery, or theft during the nighttime. Stop somebody from fleeing with your property after committing one of these crimes if you believe the property can't be recovered otherwise. Wow. You reasonably believe the property has no other means of protection. Police can't help in time. Shooting a burglar, stealing your car at night could be legal if you reasonably think it's your only way to stop them. Wow, that's crazy. So if somebody's stealing your car in Texas and you can't stop them, I guess you can kill them. Damn, Texas is wild. This one's something about cattle. We'll skip that one. Key legal considerations. Proportionality. And this is what we were talking about earlier. Proportionality. So proportional, not equivalent. The force used must match the threat. Excessive force, for example, shooting an unarmed fleeing thief in daylight could lead to conviction. Provocation. If you start the fight, self-defense is harder to claim unless you clearly try to stop and the other person keeps attacking. Criminal activity. You lose. Stand your ground protections if you're engaged in a crime. Drug dealing during the encounter. Burden of proof. Self-defense is an affirmative defense in Texas. You must raise it, but once you do, the prosecution must disprove it beyond a reasonable doubt. We're going to get into the Amber Geiger case. Summary. Texas self-defense laws favor the defendant, especially with no duty to retreat, the castle doctrine, and property protections. You can use deadly force if you reasonably believe it's immediately necessary to stop imminent harm or certain crimes, even in public. However, the belief must hold up as reasonable in court, and excessive or provoked actions can void the defense. So this is going to be the argument, guys. Excessive or provoked actions. So did Karmelo provoke Austin into physically putting his hands on him? And is what he did considered reasonable? Okay, let's look from a defense standpoint. Let's look at some cases that were successful in claiming self-defense, and then we'll look at a few cases that were unsuccessful. Yeah, you might be right. Yeah, it's all up for interpretation. Jari says little guys can fight. I don't know about little and petite though, Jari. You can only be so good at fighting. But if you only weigh 130 pounds, I mean, think about that. Most men can pick that weight up over their head. Now, picking up 200 pounds while you weigh 130 pounds and putting that over your head, it's almost impossible. So when you have one guy that could throw the other guy across a room and then the other guy can't even pick up the other guy, I think there should be, there's definitely a deficit there. Yep, that's a good point, Jay Ray. And if he was kind of rifling through items, yeah, he's not going to be able to take the self-defense plea because he was in the commission of a crime. So it's definitely murder. Their brains aren't fully cooked. Or they're overcooked, right? Okay, let's get into some of these cases. We're not going to go too deep because of time. You guys might know a lot of these. So once again, these are cases that were successful in using a self-defense case or plea or, yeah, argument. Okay, George Zimmerman, Florida, 2012. George Zimmerman, a neighborhood watch volunteer, shot and killed Trayvon Martin, an unarmed 17-year-old in Sanford, Florida. Zimmerman claimed self-defense, alleging Martin attacked him and he feared for his life during a physical altercation. The outcome was acquitted of second-degree murder and manslaughter in 2013. Florida's Stand Your Ground law supported his claim as the prosecution couldn't disprove beyond a reasonable doubt that Zimmerman didn't act in self-defense. A key factor, the case hinged on Zimmerman's assertion of imminent danger and the lack of conclusive evidence contradicting his account. So if I remember this case correctly, it was late at night. I think Trayvon was just coming back from a gas station and Zimmerman confronted him, right? Confronted him, probably profiling him, considering what time it was. And they got into a physical altercation. And I believe that Trayvon started kicking his ass, like smashing his head into the pavement. And it was at that point that he killed him. So, yeah, that's very similar. But that's, all out violence. I don't know if there was any violence here against Karmelo. I know that there was some kind of physical element. But what that entails, I'm not quite sure yet. You have Kyle Rittenhouse. During a protest in Kenosha, Wisconsin, 17-year-old Kyle Rittenhouse fatally shot two men and injured a third with an AR-15 style rifle. He claimed self-defense, arguing the individuals pursued and attacked him amid the unrest following a police shooting. Outcome of that case was he was acquitted of all charges, including homicide, November of 2021. Video evidence and witness testimony supported his claim that he acted to protect himself from immediate harm. Key factor, Wisconsin law allows deadly force if a person reasonably believes it's necessary to prevent death or great bodily harm, and the jury found his actions met the standard. So I agree with that one. I agree with that outcome. Tamika Green, Washington, D.C., 2020. Tamika Green. So here's a good example here of you guys who keep bringing up the fact that he had a knife on him. All right, details. Tamika Green shot and killed her boyfriend, Brian Tate Jr., in an apartment, claiming self-defense during a physical altercation. She testified that Tate attacked her and she acted to protect herself. The outcome, acquitted of second-degree murder and firearm possession during a crime of violence in August of 2023, though she was convicted of carrying a pistol without a license. So it's like if it's a crime to carry a knife into the school, he's going to get charged with that. And then he may get off on self-defense with the other stuff. Yeah, mine too. There's a thick layer of bong resin. I think Zimmerman followed him, though I don't know. This isn't the best case to use as an example. I know that there was a lot more violence in that case. I know at one point Zimmerman was getting beat up. I think the question was if he wouldn't have been harassing Martin, that it may not have happened, right? Yeah, this case is controversial. What's going on, Mark? Cindy says, yeah, he's going to get charges no matter what. But what charges will stick? Yeah, that's a good question. Here's another case. DaBaby, Jonathan Kirk, North Carolina, 2018. A rapper, DaBaby, shot and killed a 19-year-old man in a Walmart in Huntersville, North Carolina. He claimed the individual attempted to rob him and his family, prompting him to act in self-defense. Charges were dropped after surveillance footage and witness accounts corroborated his claim of an imminent threat. Key factors: North Carolina self-defense laws, including no duty to retreat in a public place where one has the right to be, supported his actions. Trayvon became the aggressor. Zimmerman should have let the authorities handle it. He's not going out following the kid. Well, apparently it was part of some kind of block watch. Like at that point, if you see something suspicious, you call the cops, right? Like, hey, I think I see somebody that I consider suspicious. Come check it out. Cops show up and say, oh, it's just some kid that lives around here. No big deal. These incidents usually happen because two separate parties make bad decisions together, and they meet in the middle. They meet in the middle with some kind of disaster. We have the case of Jose Alba, New York, 2022. Jose Alba, a bodega worker in Manhattan, stabbed a man who attacked him behind the counter after a dispute over a purchase. Alba claimed self-defense, asserting the man assaulted him and he feared for his life. Outcome: murder charges were dismissed in July of 2022 after public outcry and evidence, including video footage, supported his self-defense claim. I remember that one. Key factor: the prosecution conceded that Alba's actions were reasonable given the immediate threat, despite New York's duty to retreat laws not applying in his workplace. Oh, so they're trying to say, hey, like if you're being robbed, you're not necessarily in a public place. You should run. You know, that doesn't give you a right to brutally murder an armed robber. But in this case, he was correct, and even the video showed that he was correct. Sleuth, he had multiple reports over the past 6 months of activity he found to be suspicious, but Martin was minding his own damn business, in my opinion. Yeah, I mean, you might be right, but just minding your own business and having somebody butting into your business, does that give you the right to start, getting into a physical altercation with them and start smashing their head into the ground? It's like it really doesn't matter whose fault it is, who started the fight. It's kind of like, what did you do after that? Did you do what you had to do to protect yourself and your property? Or did you go above and beyond? I don't know. That was a very divisive case as well. Trayvon Martin. Zimmerman was like obsessing over Martin being a suspicious character, but he just came home late at night and walked. Yeah, I think that's what started it all. Brown Eyed Girl, hope everyone has a great rest of your day. I will catch the rest on replay. It was good to see you. Always good to see you. All right, Kenny Durr and Daryl Kiefer. Two businessmen shot and killed a man who broke into their East Baltimore warehouse, claiming self-defense after repeated burglaries. They argued the intruder appeared armed and posed a threat. They were acquitted of first-degree murder in 2003 by a judge who ruled their actions were justified to protect themselves and their property. Key factors: Maryland law allows deadly force in self-defense if there's a reasonable belief of danger, and the judge found their response proportionate. These cases illustrate successful self-defense claims under varying circumstances. All right, let's look at some unsuccessful cases. Have a great day, Cindy. Thanks again for the super chat. Appreciate that. Okay, so here's some cases where they were unsuccessful in the self-defense argument. Oscar Pistorius, South Africa, 2013. Oscar Pistorius, a South African Paralympic athlete, shot and killed his girlfriend, Reva Steenkamp, through a bathroom door in his home. He claimed self-defense, asserting he believed she was an intruder. Betty Moran. Betty Moran killed her abusive husband, Willie Moran, by shooting him while he slept, claiming self-defense due to years of brutal beatings. She argued she acted out of fear he would kill her when he awoke. Convicted of aggravated murder and sentenced to life in prison. Jodi Arias. You guys probably all know this case. Out of Arizona in 2008, Jodi Arias stabbed and shot her ex-boyfriend Travis Alexander, claiming self-defense after years of alleged abuse. She said the killing occurred during a violent altercation where she feared for her life, and she was lying. Outcome: convicted of first-degree murder in 2013 and sentenced to life without parole in 2015. Reason for her failure: the jury rejected her self-defense claim due to the extreme nature of the attack. 27 stab wounds, a slit throat, and a gunshot, suggesting premeditation rather than an immediate defensive response. Evidence of planning, like stolen weapons, further undermined her story. So in Karmelo's case, he just stabbed one time. He ran away from the scene of the crime, but didn't really flee the scene. He kind of put himself in a different area and appeared to be kind of waiting. Michael Dunn, Florida, USA, 2012. Michael Dunn fired 10 shots into a car at a gas station, killing 17-year-old Jordan Davis after an argument over loud music. I remember this. Dunn claimed self-defense, alleging Davis threatened him with a weapon. The outcome: convicted of first-degree murder in 2014 after a mistrial on that charge in 2013 and sentenced to life without parole. Reason for failure: no weapon was found in the car, and witnesses contradicted Dunn's claim of a threat. Florida's stand your ground law didn't apply, as the jury found he wasn't reasonably in fear for his life and continued shooting as the car fled. Yeah, that was murder for sure. I don't know too much about the case, CJK. It's been a while since I read into that. Oh yeah, she was nuts, Jari. She had those Steve Buscemi eyes. She had those Koberger eyes. Amber Geiger, off-duty police officer Amber Geiger shot and killed Botham Jean in his own apartment, claiming self-defense. She said she mistook his apartment for hers and thought he was an intruder when he stood up. Outcome: convicted of murder in 2019 and sentenced to 10 years in prison. Yeah, what an idiot. I think this person, Amber Geiger, somehow got into the wrong apartment. She thought it was hers. I think she may have even been under the influence or something like that. And sees this guy in his own apartment doing his own thing, and she gets she gets all worked up. Like, what are you doing in my apartment? Kills him. Like, what the fuck, lady? You just walked into the wrong apartment and killed an innocent person. Reason for that failure: the jury rejected her self-defense claim, finding she wasn't justified in using deadly force. Gene was unarmed and in his own home, and her mistake didn't legally excuse the killing under Texas law, despite its strong self-defense protections. Yeah, that was man, what an awful story. Derek Chauvin. Police officer Derek Chauvin knelt on George Floyd's neck for over 9 minutes during an arrest, leading to Floyd's death. The defense argued Chauvin acted in self-defense or defense of others, claiming Floyd's resistance posed a threat. The outcome: convicted of second-degree unintentional murder, third-degree murder, and second-degree manslaughter in 2021, sentenced to 22.5 years. Reason for failure: video evidence and expert testimony showed Floyd was not an imminent threat once restrained. The force used was deemed excessive and unreasonable, negating self-defense. And then finally, you have Alexander Weiss. Alexander Weiss shot and killed his ex-girlfriend's new boyfriend, Jonathan Stoffel, during a confrontation. Weiss claimed self-defense, alleging Stoffel attacked him first. Alexander Weiss was convicted of first-degree intentional homicide in 2020 and sentenced to life without parole. Reason for failure: evidence showed Weiss initiated the encounter by going to Stoffel's home armed, and the jury found he didn't reasonably fear imminent death or great bodily harm. His actions suggested intent rather than defense. So I don't know, guys. That's pretty much all I have on that. I'm going to close down the poll. So if you guys want to vote on that real quick, you can. Do you believe it was self-defense or murder? So far, 6% of you say self-defense. That one, I don't know. I'm not saying it's not self-defense, but it's not looking that way right now. It's not looking like he's going to be able to have much success with that. He has some things in his favor. He did warn them. He didn't go overboard with the attack. Sounds like one plunge. That's it. Threw the knife nearby. Didn't flee the scene. Kind of stayed by, and told officers right from the get-go, like, "Hey, I told him not to touch me. This was all self-defense. I warned him." And the other side of that coin is that you have somebody who's potentially looking for trouble. He's an athlete. He knows the rules. You know, you don't sit under somebody else's tent. It's almost as if he knew these folks would try to force him out. And once they did what he already knew that they were going to do, he acted like it was self-defense, committing the murder. Hey, super chat from Sensei. Thank you. These cases make me feel sick. So much insanity and ruthlessness in the world. Interesting discussion, though. We will see what unfolds in the case. Yeah, guys, I'll keep you up to date on this. We're going to close up the poll. There's your results. Waiting for the facts. 52%. Great. We should. 41% are already convinced, you know, it's a clear case of murder. 5% say self-defense, and that was 51 votes. So thank you for participating in that. Cindy Lean, big shout out to you and Sensei for sponsoring today's live stream. Remember, guys, the Sleuth Intuition channel is 100% crowd-funded. So if you guys want to support my channel, please hit the like button. Maybe share the video. Consider becoming a member. You can always donate to the Cash App, the Zelle, or the Venmo, all under Sleuth Intuition. So it's good to see all of you. And if you're part of Replay Crew, you know what to do. Drop a comment, we'll get back to you. So guys, don't forget, members, we have a members-only meeting in about 2 hours. So be there or be square. Everybody else, I'll catch you on the flip side. Peace.